I'm being nosy. Sorry. Hi, friends, and welcome back.
Welcome to Saturday Morning Chats.
On today's episode, I'm going to be talking about the spiritual process and the spiritual path. And that may be something that you don't think about that often, but allow me to kind of make a pitch to you, if you will, and see if I can kind of sell you on the benefits of the spiritual path. And, well, what do I mean by the spiritual path? Let me start there because a lot of people, when you say words like spiritual, they start thinking about religion, and that is not really what I'm talking about. When I say the spiritual path, I simply mean understanding that you are a soul or a spirit first, right? And as a soul or a spirit, when you think of your life from that particular perspective, everything shifts and everything changes. That you're not just flesh, blood, and bone, that you're not just the cars and the houses and all those kinds of things that occupy our minds every day. When you think about the fact that you are a spirit, that you actually originate in a realm that is beyond this one, beyond the one that we know. When you look at your life from that perspective, the cars and the houses and things of that nature, they take on a different meaning. They're far less important for one. But when you look from the broader perspective, the things that we occupy our minds with, the things that we occupy our time with, are simply there to serve something much larger. And that larger thing is the spiritual path. So I'm not sure if people that are gonna watch this video are Christian or from other disciplines. Perhaps you don't even have a particular faith that you claim, and that's fine because that's irrelevant. That is irrelevant to the spiritual path. When I'm talking about the spiritual path, I'm talking about the fact that as a soul that has come into your body and decided that you were going to be in human form, that there is a reason for that, that there is something much, much larger that is happening, that is going on. And so let me drill down a little bit deeper. So let's say that most people know the concept of angels, and that particular symbol simply means that that is a being that comes from beyond. And so stick with me for a second. I'm going to try to see if I can shift you into, as I said, give you a sales pitch or get you to consider the fact that who and what you are is beyond just flesh and bone. So most people are familiar with the concept of angels. People say that they are spirits or helpful beings that come here that kind of serve humanity. But here is the truth. In a sense, that is what we all are. Now, angels, they have as their sole purpose benevolence, right? They are here to kind of help us and guide us and save us and keep us out of trouble and all of that. Their sole goal in life is benevolence. But what if, just like an angel, you are also a spirit that is from the beyond or from another realm, and you have just taken on your human form? And so the difference being that your goal in life is to become more, to become a better soul or spirit or human being, to evolve, to advance on the spiritual path. Whereas the angel has already done that kind of work. They're just here to be good. Now, we could choose as human beings the path of benevolence and saying that we're only going to show up in the world as a benevolent being. That is such a noble thing to do, but it's very, very difficult. It is very difficult. And so all these things that are kind of showing up in our path are simply there to kind of move us along the scale. I hope that analogy makes sense. Most people know angels. They think about angels as being spirits from beyond and inhabiting a human form. And so are you. And so your purpose is to evolve and advance yourself along the spiritual path to become more loving, to become more kind, to expand your personality as far as you can expand it in this particular realm. Service, understanding what your life purpose is, and definitely being kind and being benevolent are a part is a part of that process. So I hope you're still with me. Now that we've established that we all are spirits in these bodies and that our origination is from the beyond, and I'm pointing upwards, whether you call that heaven, whether you call that the universe, the terms don't matter. Just know that there is something far bigger going on than you may have considered. And we come into these bodies for the purpose of advancing our souls. And so when you're not doing that, and this is the key point, when you're not doing that, and when you don't have an understanding that that is why you're here and that is what's going on, you're going to find life extremely difficult, right? Nothing is going to make sense. Why did I lose my job? Why did I get the divorce? Why did my son break his leg? All these things are happening to us to further evolve us along the spiritual path. So, let's say, for example, you do unfortunately lose a job. How does that affect our spiritual growth? Because that's really what all this stuff is about. It is really about our evolution. And so in a perfect world, what we did was step back after we took the hit, like, oh my God, I lost my job. The fear is coming. We tamp all that down. We move to a state of trust. We figure out what's good in this situation. And we figure out, I don't really like that job anyway. And so it is now time for me to find out what I'm really here to do. And we take that perspective and that opportunity to further advance ourselves along the spiritual path or to evolve up the scale. But as human beings, myself included, I've been in a situation where I've lost my job, panic stricken. Do you hear me? I had no concept of the spiritual path. And so what I did was I just spiraled downwards. I spiraled into fear, into depression, what's going to happen to my cars and my houses and what's my family going to think and all of that. And just, it just really dragged me down into a state of depression. And so that is not how to manage the spiritual path. And that is what most people do because they don't have an understanding of what the spiritual process is. And so when you make the shift, let me tell you, baby, when you make the shift from seeing your life from the perspective of I'm just a body and I'm just going through the motions to I am a spiritual being, that I am actually a soul that is inhabiting this body and I'm living this life so that I can expand and grow and develop my soul. I can evolve on the spiritual path. Everything shifts. As I said, in those two scenarios, you have someone that's extremely depressed because they lost a job, which I was, that happened to me in the past. Or you have someone that says, I'm going to take this moment right here and figure out what is next for me, right? What is the very next step on my evolutionary path? I didn't like the job anyway. So I'm just going to trust that now it's time for me to figure out what my true work is. And in moments like that, you're going to find the universe, the benevolent spirits, the angels, they're all going to show up to support you and help you along the path. And I'm getting a chill. That is what this life is about. In a divorce, when you find yourself in a rocky situation in your marriage, If we would, instead of kicking and screaming and getting mad and pointing fingers and you, and I hate you, and you did this and all that stuff is often true. But if we would just take the time and say, you know what? What is next for me? What am I being called to do in this now moment? Who am I being asked to become? Sometimes we have to turn inward and say, I'm facing this. What have I contributed to it? And once you do that deeper inner work and you constantly look at yourself, you're going to find that you're just going to keep evolving. And in situations like a divorce, when you do that work at that level, sometimes you find that a divorce is not necessary. And sometimes you find that it is. And so the universe makes a way for you to leave your current situation in which you were more than likely unhappy if you're going to divorce. And it makes room for you to find your spiritual partner. But here's the thing. You gotta be on the beat of it. You gotta be on the beat of it. You have to have the understanding. You have to look at every single thing in your life as part of that process. Everything is serving you. If you don't do that and you complain and you kick and you scream and you start spiraling downward, and it's a very human thing to do, that is what we're fighting against. Some people say there's a devil, there's an enemy that's always after us. I say this, that human nature is such that you're going to always tend towards the dark side unless you are diligent and vigilant and you take a stand and say, you know what, I'm not going to do that. And having the broader perspective about the spiritual path can really, really help you do that. And so things like law of attraction, things like benevolent beings, and the universe is always supporting us. When you shift from life sucks and something is always happening to me to life is here to support my growth and expansion, period, point, and blank. When you switch to that perspective, everything is going to change for you. You're going to find yourself living your life completely differently. And you're going to be in anticipation of what is next for you when you run into pitfalls or calamity. And let me tell you, it's always going to be something, because life is not about our comfort, it's about our growth and development. And how can you grow and develop if you don't face anything? How can you learn patience if you don't have a child that challenges your patience? How can you turn inward and figure out what kind of person you are and how you're showing up in the world if you don't find yourself in conflict in a relationship? How can you find your true purpose if you don't lose the current job that you have that is not fulfilling that process? And so I hope I've done a good job in getting you to see your life from a much broader perspective. That is where you find peace. That is where you find joy. That is where you find hope, because you know that everything is in support of you, and everything is in support of you being on the spiritual path. So how do you get on the spiritual path? One, the biggest one is just the awareness that I'm a spirit. And when you look through the eyes of that, everything changes. You're still buying cars, and you're still getting houses, and you're still in relationships. But when you understand that who I am is much larger than all of this stuff, right? You can step back and put a little distance between you and whatever is happening to you. And you can ask yourself the question, how is this serving me? So the biggest step that you can take to get yourself on the spiritual path is just to hold the broader perspective that you are soul and spirit first, and that there was something much larger going on than just the day-to-day stuff that you're saying. And just knowing that that stuff is supporting your process. It is not the whole process. And the second thing that I would say to support you getting on the spiritual process is try to find some kind of books or YouTube videos or texts. I mean, if you have a religious background, maybe you haven't really been on it like you were years ago, or maybe your family had a particular religion or faith that they followed. Start kind of digging into that a little bit. Again, we're not after the rules and the ritual. What we're after is something that reminds us that we're much bigger. And religious texts can do that. There's the Bible. If you are not a person that's really religious, there is a book called A Course in Miracles that really doesn't have a particular faith. But it does talk about the spiritual path, and it does talk about the larger thing that we're doing here. And now I'm laughing, and I apologize for that, but I'm laughing because you're going to say, what in the world? A Course in Miracles can be a very difficult book to read. And so let me just give you that warning. But if you're looking for a particular text that kind of can give a little bit of construct to all of this, when you first start reading it, you may not understand it, because I sure didn't, and a lot of people don't. But if you stick with it long enough, and if you just become a vessel and become open to receive higher consciousness, it'll start to make sense to you in time. So some sort of connection to something, like I said, videos, books. There's tons of books out there. Dolores Cannon has some books out there that talk about what life is like on the other side, or what is going on the other side. Sadhguru is I guess you would call him, well, a guru. Or yogi, and he has YouTube videos all over the place in which he talks about the spiritual path. There are lots of people out there that are talking about this kind of thing, and so get yourself connected to a source that can constantly feed you and remind you that you are much bigger than flesh, blood, and bone. Meditation is a good thing to do. And when I say meditate, I'm not talking about anything all ritualistic and drawn out. You're just sitting, and you're just quiet, and you're just focusing on your breath, and you're just trying to get rid of all the crazy, chaotic thoughts about life and about this stuff. And you just put your mind on the realization that you are not your body, that you are something much larger. And it may not work the first 1, 2, or 10 times you do it, but if you stick with it long enough, and if you develop a habit and a practice, you're going to drop down into something that's going to feel so good, and it's all going to start to make sense for you. So those are the things that I recommend as far as getting connected to the spiritual path. But here's the thing. Once you accept the invitation, just start looking. Right? Everywhere you turn, you're going to see something that's going to remind you of the spiritual process, that's going to invite you to press deeper into the spiritual process, because all the benevolent beings and guides, God, universe, whatever name you choose for that, wants you on the spiritual path. It wants you to evolve into becoming your highest and best self. So as soon as you accept the invitation and you say, I'm serious about this, and this is what I want to do, I want to know who I really am, and I want to know what all of this is about. The second that you do that, I guarantee you, if you start looking, it's going to show up for you. A book that you never noticed before suddenly appears in your experience, or someone recommends it to you, or you get a call from someone that says, hey, have you seen this particular video? Or there's a meeting going on across town where they're talking about some spiritual thing. Trust me on this. As soon as you open up your heart and mind to the spiritual path, everything that you need is going to unfold for you, because that is what you should have been doing from the very day that you breathed life into your body.